Okay, so tell us, for people who have never been to a Music That Makes Community conference, tell us about the material that gets covered at the conference, what happens, and what the thought is that we are sending people away with.
Great, thank you, Jake. So at the simplest level, what we're doing is this is a training. It's a training in musical leadership, and it's a training in which the participants and we as the leaders are discovering and renewing the traditional ways nearly all, probably all cultures taught music before there was print. So it's an oral tradition. It's not about the content of the music. It works with all kinds of different sorts of music. We have some brand new composed music, lots of world music, some classic stuff that you can adapt. It's about a relational process of music making in which learning and the teacher's role, the teacher and music leader are the same person, and learning is always part of the music making, and then people claim it and find their way into it, and in the process of finding their way into it begin to discover things, and so it's in that sense it's traditional music making. Sometimes people call it, or we call it, paperless music. That doesn't actually, it tells us what's not there, it doesn't tell us what is there. So it's relational music making. It's a way of getting a whole lot of people singing together, finding their voice, discovering the possibilities of improvising, learning that they can find harmony, or in our culture, inviting a lot of people who have had their voice taken away, been told they oughtn't to sing or can't sing, maybe they're telling themselves they can't sing, to invite them into singing. So we are teaching a way to lead music that is inviting to people who are, we want to say, natural musicians. The distinction, untrained musicians and trained musicians, natural musicians, on the premise that everybody can sing, that music is really, in a significant way, at the heart of our humanity.
So some of the people who come to these conferences are music directors and choir members, people who hope to lead music or already do lead music, and then there's another group of clergy and seminarians and people in those roles. So tell us about why this work is important, maybe from a pastoral point of view. Because you're a priest.
I understand that. Yeah, thank you. I'm kind of disinclined to frame it pastorally, and I'm going to tease your question a little bit. I'm more interested in it organizationally, in terms of how the congregation works as a gathering of people, how the assembly works. So finding an alternative way to lead and to share leadership, which has significant power to transform the way an organization works, or in this instance, the way a church works. And then, so that's a little more, it's not administrative, it's big vision, church systems. And then, rather than saying pastorally, which feels to me like pastoral care, but I think I'm teasing out with this perhaps what you meant by that word, and I like this. I'm happy to go this direction. There are ways of making music that touch really, really deep places in our character. Help people discover personal authority, freedom, trusting their imagination, and what I think is one of the fundamental questions we face, being human beings in relation to other human beings. What am I supposed to do when I don't know what's next? Which musically is, in a sense, where we break out into improvisation. We leave the score. It's a moment of inspiration. It also can be a moment of crisis. And that kind of moment of inspiration, a moment of crisis, happens in everyday life all the time. Not necessarily with music, or often not with music. But the high risk, and people do experience it as a high risk of stepping to the edge of stepping up to claim a leadership place, learning to be generous with leadership so that it actually calls forth the freedom and autonomy and contribution of the people that you're leading, and in fact raises up other leaders, and then finding our ability to make a choice or make a commitment in a moment. And we're doing this with music, but the practice, this is a deep religious practice. I believe that the practice that we're doing actually translates into all kinds of other startling situations. Is there a moment when I have an opportunity to speak a word of kindness, a word of blessing, a word of help to someone on the street? Is there a moment when somebody's in really, really, really serious trouble, and I look around and say, it's going to be me or nobody. What can I do? Those are the same in character. They're the same kind of improvisation. They come to this point of saying, I don't know how to do this, and beyond that point, that's true. If it's a situation I've never been in before, I don't know how to do it. And what happens in facing into that situation with an open heart and with generosity, I like to say, this is a practice that teaches people courage, compassion, and creativity. Courage and compassion, I see what's happening with the other, and I've got the commitment, the willingness to take a risk that courage represents. I'm going to do something, and then what am I going to do? I'm going to, in the moment, find what I'm going to do. It's beyond planning. It's beyond preparation. Preparation is clearly part of it, but it is that quality of the moment where something that could be a disaster turns out to be something else. What's something that could be a wonderful opportunity that's about to be missed turns out to be the opportunity it's supposed to be. We're experiencing that in the music making, and people talk about how this practice, the 3 days that we spend together, and what they take home and continue to do with it and learn from it, and the ways that it touches their congregation, actually engages those issues.
Can you tell us, do you have any, you've been to now 20 of, or you're in the middle of your 20th Music That Makes Community workshop. Do you have, do any stories come to mind of people you've heard back from after they've come here, and what kind of difference there?
I have a wonderful story, but even before that, I want to comment on the number, the 20. I have designed and led other workshops before this. I've been proud of them. They've been effective. And usually by about the third iteration, I've gotten bored and thought, well, we've got that one down. We know how to deliver a package that can teach people this and train people that, and they go home ready to do whatever it is they go home ready to do. I've been part of all 20 of these with the most amazing leaders, and every single time the particular team that we put together comes away having themselves been touched and learning all kinds of stuff. Each one's more exciting than the last. It's almost a new experience. I would say it's like 40 years of being a priest and presiding at the altar and not getting bored. I mean, there's something here that is touching into such a deep place of human creativity, and a deep place of connecting with the divine creativity in us and God's creativity, God's compassion, God's courage, it's like, it's as alive as you can be. It is so much fun doing this, watching people do this, watching people understand that real learning happens when you take risks and that it's worth it, and feeling supported enough and encouraged enough to take big risks, like standing up in front of the group and calling forth the group's voice when person has never led a group singing ever before in their life. It's amazing stuff. Now I forgot the other question.
Yeah, the other question is, do you have a story of of some place or someone for whom how this conference has made a difference in someone's life?
Well, it's a really, really new story, and it's not the conference itself. It's a rippling out from the conference, because in some ways it's changed me. Important ways. I saw the possibility of doing this. It was a piece of theory. It was a piece of reading about organizational development. It was a lot of reading about neuroscience and psychology and thinking about learning. And I gathered these wonderful, wonderful musicians. And for quite a while, I was doing the kind of research, contextual, doing a little lecture to tell people, oh, now this is why we're doing this, and sort of laying out the bibliography and the footnotes and all of that. And then I noticed that I was asking a group of 25 to 50 people to take really, really big risks and watching them do it. And I thought, I'm trying to tell people here that everybody's a musician. I need to treat myself, when I'm not in the leadership role, as a participant. So I systematically kind of participated in the small groups and began getting up and leading myself. And
do you have any music training?
I've got a good number of years of keyboard training. Not a lot of music theory, just a lot of playing the piano. A little voice coaching with a good singer. So I'm somewhere halfway between a natural musician and a trained musician. I'm way out of my league in terms of the quality of music leaders training that I'm dealing with, but I'm hearing something. Now the point is, you asked about somebody coming, so I was the person that I'm going to tell this about. And I was talking, I have repeatedly doing smaller workshops, because I'm starting to do little 2-hour workshops in other settings. And I'll be at a conference with someone and say, oh, I'm doing a workshop on teaching paperless music. And the person will say, I can't sing. And I say, come to my workshop. And they sing. So I was in a setting like that, in a Christian educators, Christian formation workshop, and a young priest colleague that I really, really like and respect said, well, that's all very interesting, but I'm not really a singer. And I said, we can teach anybody to sing. And he said, okay, well, we're just headed over to the grocery store to get some refreshments for the conference. You want to teach me to sing in the grocery store? And I said, all right. And it was me and 3 other conference leaders. And we were in a great big Safeway at Tahoe. And the other 2 didn't know this was coming. and I said, Matt asked me to teach you a song. So I'd just like to get the 4 of us singing here. And of course, the 2 of the leaders looked really chagrined. And Matt, who'd asked for this, said, I'm on. So I roped them in and started them singing What We Need Is Here. What we need is here. What we need is here. And showing Matt how to lead it with his hand in the grocery store, and the traffic around us, the shoppers' traffic, the shopping carts stopped. and there's this strange, wonderful kind of interest, kind of leading in and kind of backing off at the same moment. And Matt, who's just out there and crazy in a wonderful way, said, gosh, that worked. And then he went over to the closest person that was watching and said, come sing with us. And she said, no. And he said, no, come on. And we didn't get her to sing. I think if we kept at it, we would have. But we did get her to come stand in the center of our little circle. And we said, okay, we just learned a song, we'll sing it to you. And it was fascinating. Right there in the grocery store, we watched this kind of excited, expectant, wanting to run away melt. And it was, nobody's ever sung to me in the grocery store. So it was just a crazy, playful, not an iconic moment, it's almost like an ironic moment of, yeah, what we're about is taking music out to the whole world. And I think of the Australian Aborigines song lines and the tradition that the Great Spirit somehow sang the world into being. And there's a hint of that in the book of Job, too. And actually taking the singing to the grocery store is exactly right. It's very like the experience that we actually had today at St. Paul's Chapel in New York City, the church pilgrimage site for the World Trade Center disaster. So they get 1.5 million visitors a year. It turns out to like 400 to 500 visitors an hour. And there's 30 some of us in the middle of this church with what they call the swirl, just going around the edge of all of these pilgrims that have thought they've come here to see the displays about the relief for the workers that were looking for the bodies in the site. But it's also the oldest church building in Manhattan, and we're doing a music workshop in the middle of it. And just watching people drawn